That's pretty bad. The Raptors lose to the Detroit Pistons, 113-104, which I'm not sure if it cements them, but it certainly puts them in a position where so far they're the only team to have lost to the Pistons twice, if I'm picking up on things correctly. Not very complimentary, not a very flattering place to be. And you know what? The Pistons were like the odds-on favorites coming into this game. That is, I guess, an insight into what the basketball world currently, the quick snapshot, thinks of the Raptors heading into this game. Emmanuel quickly comes back. I thought that his driving game was nice. A lot of great hesitations, a lot of great in and out moves. The Raptors continue to work the seal plus swing cut action into a lot of their pick and roll. And it's definitely, that's adding a ton of assists to Kelly Olynyk. Like Olynyk in this game, 19 points, 6 boards, 8 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, 6 turnovers, 72% from the field for him. He's just loading up the stat sheet. But he's also on the opposite side as Jalen Duren finishes with 23 rebounds. And James Wiseman, he played less than 20 minutes, but he had 10 boards himself. This 9 offensive rebounds for Jalen Duren. I think he had 5 dunks in the first quarter. And not everything was off of an offensive rebound, but the Raptors, and get ready, everybody, because the feckless drop is coming. That interior defense, feckless, man. TN here says Duren killed us this season. He certainly did. There's a level of physicality there that he's able to bring. He's athletic. I like his passing chops a lot. Did he have a big passing game? I know I saw some. 5 assists, which he makes a lot of similar reads to how Kelly makes those passes. And James Wiseman is definitely a step down from that. But there was a lot of cool playmaking big stuff in this game. And we also saw that huge keeper play from Wiseman where he's like, bam, punched it. The Raptors used to run a lot of keepers back when Scotty was healthy. I love a good keeper, and it was nice to see that from James. You know, a lot of people are rooting on him. Even like Isaiah Stewart, 5 for 6. Jalen Duren, 8 for 9. James Wiseman, 3 for 4. The bigs in this game, unfettered access to the rim, honestly. Honestly, if we're going to talk about something interesting, I thought that Bruce Brown had an interesting game. Like, he found his way in it. I kind of almost I don't know, put my foot in my mouth because I tweeted about Bruce and I said the Bruce Brown experience is kind of humbling in that the player he has been for so long and that I think had become that the league had identified so many things that he's been good at just has not been the case in Toronto. And we all eagerly discussed his superlatives. What is this guy going to be good at in Toronto? How does he fit next to X and Y and all this kind of stuff? And I guess if you just play differently and, the context is different, things don't happen the same way. And that's the gist of what I was saying. But then he comes out, he gives you 17 points, 5 assists, 4 boards, 2 steals, and a block in a loss, of course. But this is for the first time in a long time where Bruce, if you go and you're the advanced stats or the box score watcher, he's like, hey, Bruce, which has not really been the case in so many of these games lately. It wasn't this one, at the very least. The stuff we're really paying attention to in this game, in my opinion, Emmanuel Quickly, because he's the point guard or a backcourt member of the future for these Raptors, and Grady Dick, who is, the very same. Grady just so happened to be the game where he did not cash triples. 1 for 6. He went 3 for 7 inside the arc. He took pretty difficult shots, and he did only come away with 1 assist, but I think, well, I don't know. I won't sugarcoat it. This wasn't that big a deal, of a game for Grady. It started off pretty strong. I liked a lot of the cuts he was making, and I know S was clipping a lot of them, but it's nice to see a guy who makes the right cuts as a rookie. It's nice to see a guy who was lauded as one of the best cutters in the draft, if not the best, and one of the headier cutters in the NBA relative to a lot of guys in the younger age groups. That's great. Just the 3-point shot didn't fall tonight. But you can still see some of the on-ball stuff is picking up. You can see that there's options for him as an on-ball guy. And even if he's trapped in the corner with Cade Cunningham has to take the blocking foul because he's let that little stutter rip out of the corner, putting the ball down. Those are wins. There's more losses for Grady tonight, though. Just missed shots, a little bit of sloppy play. And, I didn't mind the defense that much. Like he was sticking with guys. He still falls and like crashes on a lot of these plays, certainly, but the effort is always there. He reads the defense pretty well insofar as where he needs to be. And that's the story of Grady in this game. Quickly, I don't think, well, I know hmm, the pull-up jumper did not pop off in this game. And the pull-up jumper is kind of like everything you want it to be. Oh, we have a correction. So Dondre Diedrich says, I think the Pistons beat the Bulls twice as well. Noted. So if I'm wrong about that, we have a correction. But Dondre didn't say it with a lot of force or authority. So maybe it's up in the air, TBD. But yeah, quickly, like the 3-point shot wasn't really going, which has been a little bit of a trend lately. I think it's because there's so much more pressure on those shots. He has to, kind of extend that range outwards. And then also on top of that is like there's more pressure for him to do it off the bounce. So the catch and shoot stuff is coming less in the flow of the offense because there's not a natural creator like a Scotty Barnes to bend the defense, break it past the point of rotation, and then get the ball to, Emmanuel. It's a tougher ask. But also in that is we get to see a guy who is putting the ball on the floor, using a lot of different dribble moves to try and get to the rim. And he's still getting aggressive coverages. This is what we drew up the other day in the notebook. He's still getting aggressive coverages, which of course means that they can run the play that they love, which is Kelly flashes up to like the level of the screen. You quick trigger to Kelly. And since they play high at the level of the screen defensively, the screener could be Ochai, could be Grady, could be whoever, could be Bruce Brown. They seal and sprint towards the rim for a cut and oftentimes a layup. Tidy little piece of business. Good automatic read in an offense. And the Raptors are running that a lot and scoring on that a lot. I like that, quite frankly. Jordan Nwora got some volume up. A friend of mine said he thought that he was moving his feet kind of well. I thought the active hands was actually pretty good from Nwora tonight. But the feet, TBD. I'm not really sold on the feet necessarily. Ochai, one of the first questions, from Matt Hogg. What is Agbaji's NBA skill exactly? So, I was maybe a bit worried about Agbaji coming over because I wasn't exactly sure what was going to happen offensively. And this is also why, I had said at the time that I thought the first round pick, what the team's perspective on that was that the first round pick was getting Kelly Olynyk in-house. And this isn't like a big night for Kelly because he got dominated by the Pistons bigs. But Kelly, the pitch when he was coming in wasn't like, oh, you're the center of the future. You got to hold that down. It's probably like, man, it was probably like you're like a 4 sometimes and a backup 5 sometimes, right? Matt Hogg says you loved the Agbaji pickup. Well, for low cost, but I'm reiterating. I thought that the Raptors, the price they paid in the trade was for Kelly Olynyk, and so that meant that Agbaji was a toss-in. So as far as Agbaji, like kind of what the initial thing was, I like the defense, the point of attack stuff. I think he still moves his feet well. I think that like if he can't slide, he's pretty good at turn and chase, and he's a stab stepper around the screen, right? And then on top of that, we're waiting to see if that Kansas 3-point shot pops off. And then my analysis at the time of the trade was that there was nothing interesting going on outside of any of his other like offensive skills, and that we basically, to validate anything offensively, his role in the NBA is that he has to shoot the ball. Matt Hogg says, you thought the Thad pickup was low cost. Do you see the pattern? I thought the Thad pick was low cost. I don't think that's true. I guess like you could say anything, but I disagree with that. Like a first round pick swap, I think it was 11 places in the draft, is not necessarily low cost, but it's not necessarily high cost. I was very much against the Pirtle trade as far as the cost. That was, if I had a big reaction to a trade, it was the Pirtle trade, I would say. But as far as like the Raptors trade for Kelly and Agbaji, I don't think Agbaji was the stuff coming back that the Raptors had paid draft capital for. But I know what I think. I'm not going to leave it to you to reiterate my points in some sort of thing. So we're going to put that to the side. I thought this was a good faith Agbaji conversation. So I was trying to talk about his game, but okay, I guess we're in some sort of gotcha thing. Interesting. So the Raptors and the Pistons. Obviously, the big deal in this game is that the interior of the court, neither team played like really great offense. I think that the Raptors, like, they show a lot of pressure towards ball handlers. That's why you see like there's a lot of release valves. Obviously, there's a lot of lobs towards the back end of the rim, and there's a lot of skip passes that would be made to whether it's like Grimes or Sasser or like Cade or anything like that, right? Simone Fontecchio. There's a lot of open shots. Even Isaiah Stewart, like this guy hit 3 of 3 from downtown. And it's not that the Pistons went crazy from downtown or something like that, right? They were, I think, like 36%, 11 or 12 threes made in this game. They're not blowing the doors off anything, but it's just the fact that they were able to corral so many of their misses. And the one guy did a lot of that. Jalen Duren had 9 offensive rebounds, and he must have dunked 3 of them or 4 of them back. And honestly, like the Raptors, when you look at the lineups that they're throwing out there, they basically have to rely on who Jonte Porter, Kelly Olynyk, and Jalen McDaniels for size. And none of those guys are considered like a staunch defender of the rim or protector of the paint or anything like that, right? That's kind of what we're looking at for a front court. And the Pistons, for as much as they lack in other places and they have trouble creating like consistent looks offensively from a number of places, and they're learning what their offensive engines look like in Cade and Ivy, and also they run a ton of delay action and stuff like that with Duren, some high post stuff. They can succeed if they bludgeon the other team with their litany of bigs. And they certainly did in this game tonight. Bludgeoned, I think, is definitely the way to put it. The Raptors, and there's a reason they weren't favored coming into this game, but they're a team that is on the ropes with everybody. They're going to play their game. They're going to come away with, I think, like 32 assists in this game. They're going to pass the ball. They're going to turn the ball over like a decent amount of time, especially focusing like on just having it being like Kelly Olynyk or maybe, even when Scotty was like pushing the pace because he's responsible for so much creation, you do see those turnovers pop up. And, you can only hope that the turnovers that are arriving are like high risk turnovers, that it's not, a turnover out of being, overwhelmed or anything like that. It's a turnover out of being, like adventurous with your pass and trying to create something really dangerous and something really effective, right? And so when we look at the Raptors and how they try to create right now, a lot of it is done through delay action. A lot of it is done through high post initiation. And outside of that's like Emmanuel Quickly. And the Raptors, the rest of the guys who are trying to create, like you get some fledgling attempts from Bruce Brown. Agbaji every once in a while will get a possession, but none of that really turns out very impressive. He had a couple, I don't know, assists tonight, put the ball down, even if the ball just reaches him in like top side action, right? And honestly, Wara gets some chances to like run some stuff. He does, and he can score the ball, and that's helpful. We even had like Jonte Porter was the ball handler and ran a snug pick and roll. For those who don't know, a snug pick and roll is a pick and roll set lower on the court, so almost closer to the paint, right? They run a snug pick and roll between he and McDaniels. McDaniels slips out of it and goes and catches a lob. I was like, what? Jonte Porter was the ball handler. McDaniels was the screener, and we got a lob out of that. Pretty gnarly, man. That's funky basketball, to be sure. I think it was, Raptors fan says Jonte career high in blocks. 4 of them. Nice to see. Active hands. Similar to Wara as well, except I guess it's like one is that vertical active hands, and the other is like those horizontal active hands for steals. And this is something I've talked about before, but Jonte, as a defender, can oftentimes be seen doing kind of like the early work, getting a good read of what's happening so that if he's stepping over there, he's doing it with purpose, and he's trying to step over there a little bit quicker because that foot speed, that length doesn't match up well with a lot of other players who occupy the front court in the NBA, even the explosiveness, right? So he has to like think ahead and be there. And I think a lot of what he was able to do defensively tonight, and he came out of like this, like a +7. Good for him. I like that. So that's kind of where we're at, right? Jonte giving you some good front court minutes, a couple nice threes too, honestly. Like, and this goes back to last game too. When teams are going under on stuff, he's fully willing to shoot it. He doesn't introduce a lot of like motion shooting. He doesn't like have anything like that happen. But honestly, this is the big thing with him coming from G League to the NBA is like you have to validate your 3-point shooting at the level, and people have to see you do that and and react accordingly. And then honestly, like Porter can be a guy who gets like a pump, put the ball down and starts playmaking and making progressive reads. But the first thing he has to do is make shots. So 3 for 6 tonight, 2 of 5 from downtown. The pressure will be on him down the stretch every single game that teams are going to like say, make this. If he's on the Raptors next year and like coming around for things like that, these games will help develop that reputation. And they're the step towards something a little bit more important for him in this game and for his career. So I like to see that as well. And as far as like reading the game, I think he's always been very strong at that. It's just kind of like he's never going to dominate defensively because of size and a little bit of like lack of explosiveness. Yes, of course. So he has to provide like that talent gap on offense where he's like pretty crafty. He's capable with a live dribble. He's a guy who can like pass better than a lot of his contemporaries in the front court. And if things come around for him, I think a guy who can legitimately space the floor. We're kind of waiting on everything to coalesce, but I think tonight was like a meaningful game for Jonte Porter. Something I want to talk about because Jemias Ramsey played almost 20 minutes and Javon Freeman Liberty played nothing. He wasn't on any of the like when Raptors PR sends out the, like who's injured or whatever in a game. Javon wasn't on anything. This seems to me like it did not play coach's decision. And like you can't go by the website because or like NBA.com because Gary Trent Jr. is listed as a did not play coach's decision as well. And he was not available for this game. JFL wasn't. He didn't play at all. Now, if I were there, I would ask Darko about that, but I'm not there. I hope somebody does. I hope we get a little quote about that. And if I had to put my coach's hat on, I think he would just say like, I wanted to give Jemias like a big run. And Jemias, to his credit, the one shot he made tonight was a big windmill dunk and a nice one, 2-foot takeoff too. But like not a very impressive game outside of that, unfortunately. Marcus Aurelius says Jam Ramsey is a nice tank commander. You know what? It's important to be able to drive a tank when one is available. So hell yeah to that. The Raptors, HY says, why was Ramsey playing LOL? So JFL got converted, and that happens because he's been in the organization. I think he was objectively the top guy who had a 2-way contract. He was leagues ahead of the other two. And so the Raptors saw him as the natural guy to get that. Jemias Ramsey becomes available. Those two things are happening at the same time. So we get Freeman Liberty gets like elevated, signs that, converts the contract. Good. Jemias Ramsey comes in. It could be that the Raptors like Ramsey just as much as Freeman Liberty, want to get a look at him the same way they want to get a look at Freeman Liberty, and that Freeman Liberty was getting more minutes earlier, and now they're trying to get a larger look at Jemias Ramsey. Whether you agree with it, whether you agree with that or not, and I like JFL better than Ramsey, right? I like JFL better than Carton to some degree, right? Whether you agree with it or not, though, I think that's probably the Raptors' point of view. And that's probably like a handshake between Darko and the front office or something like that, right? This Raptors team, though, is not very good. I think there was Pincer Basketball had put a comment. And so we have the definitive. The Bulls and Hornets have a losing record against the Pistons as well. The Bulls are 1-2. The Hornets are 0-3. So the Raptors are not alone in this distinction. They're in a triplet of a team that has lost the Pistons multiple times. Hornets 3 times. Wow, 0-3. I guess Bulls 1-2. They had a very tumultuous portion of the season, and then just recently, I suppose. Interesting. Okay, so they're not alone in this. This is a shared distinction. Can you share a distinction? Is the distinction by proxy like a one? I feel like no, you can share a distinction. I don't know. Maybe I'm losing the grip. I'm losing the thread on this one, guys. I don't really know what I'm saying at this point. There's just not a lot of basketball to talk about right now. I'm so sorry. Like in a game where the Raptors have their best performances from some of the fledgling guys on the roster or guys who are like known quantities in Kelly Olynyk. And Kelly Olynyk is just like, he's getting points because of some of the bully drives, hits a couple threes, and is on the glass over the course of the season, of course, is going to be not like overwhelmingly so. And the Raptors run so much delay action and so much high post stuff through him. He's just like going to amass statistics. And even to some degree, that's happening with Emmanuel quickly, like 25, 5, and 8. I'm very happy for it. But, and it could have probably, I like this a lot better because so much of it was fueled by his driving game. And there are portions of games where Duren and Wiseman can be pretty good at like walling off the rim. So I don't want to like take anything away there. I liked some of Quickly's drives and I liked his resolve to keep getting to the rim. And he really has done a good job of like manipulating his pickup heading right, which matches his pull-up style for an in and out and a push dribble. Like that's great. And there's been a lot of soft finishes at the rim. Kudos to all of that. But as far as like the offensive creation, the Raptors are running in scheme, in style, and that's what we're seeing. And they're able to get like a lot of cuts out of it. They're able to get a lot of assists out of it, but the shot making on this roster just is not very impressive. They go 9 of 36 from downtown tonight, right? They only come away with 3 offensive rebounds the whole game. That's like they have 32 assists. They pass the ball well, they move well, but there's just not a lot of top end talent on this roster. And then so what are the outcomes repeatedly? Honestly, if the other team is engaged, they're going to be able to lock down a lot of the Raptors' pet actions. And the Raptors are going to have some leaks on like the weak side where they come open and they have a lot of like willing passers on the floor who will see that cut and pass to it. But you need to be able to run a pick and roll and start from a point of advantage and start bending the defense and, putting them out of order and everything like that. And the Raptors just, there's not a lot of that. As much as I like seeing Grady face, a defense that's locked in on him and like try and operate out of the triple threat, that's not going to be like congruent with good offensive numbers or like an impressive offense. And the Raptors, they played a lot of good defense in this game, quite frankly. And that's what I meant when I talked about it at the start. Like they're playing an aggressive style of defense. They're moving the ball out of a lot of they're moving it out of Cade's hands. They're moving it out of Ivy's hands. And they're making the bigs do a lot of the in-between playmaking, which I think is a good idea. I think the Raptors could have been in a much better position as far as like their defense if they just rebounded the ball better, which of course ties into being aggressive at the point of attack. Typically means you're more susceptible to allowing offensive rebounds because you load up farther away from the rim. I get it. That's part of it, of course. But even with that said, the Raptors, they come away from this game with like statistically a pretty strong defensive performance, a lot of possessions in this game, and they got a lot of the stops that they needed to. There's nothing, if you go look at the accuracy or efficiency across the board in the half court in transition where the Pistons were great. The Pistons just got a lot of their own misses and scored a lot of those misses. And the game is the game. If you can grab your misses and put them back up, you're still scoring the basketball. And so I like what the Raptors did to try and move the ball out of the guys' hands. They just didn't rebound. They didn't score the ball. And we know why that didn't happen. That's how these games are shaking out right now. Scotty was a really interesting wrinkle for these types of games because he's a wild card and that he could throw it completely the other way. Scotty is a guy who could have solved some of the rebounding stuff, could have solved some of the like heavy motion defense stuff, and could have solved some of the half court creation. Of course, he's not a salve. He doesn't, make everything perfect, but certainly he might have been able to help swing some of these games for the Raptors. And in this case, like these games just do not look swingable. Like even that the Nuggets game, they're what, 21? I was like, I don't know if they're winning this one, man. I don't think so. And they didn't. And they still made the Nuggets play Jokic 38 minutes. They still made Murray kind of like pop the hell off as a shooter and playmaker down the stretch as they loaded up on Jokic. All that stuff still happened. And they pat yourself on the back for that, but don't crown yourself for it, This is a team that's going out there. They're playing within scheme. They're playing competitively to the best of their ability, but they're not very talented. And this is a lot of G League talent on an NBA roster. That's what we're watching at this point. Pick whichever guy you like and try and identify where they're taking steps over the course of the season, I think is as best a thing you can hope for from like a fan perspective. And we honestly, there might be a few games that that swing one way, just how it shakes out. Like the Nuggets game almost did, but I guess we'll see. Marcus Aurelius asks, do you think the Raptors have a shot at a bottom 4 pick in 2025 for a generational center, Malawak, who is said to be like Wemby? I bet he's not like Wemby because I haven't really heard a ton about him yet. And by this time, Wemby still had like a lot of attention, even like a year and a half out of his draft. So I wonder. But as far as do I think the Raptors have a shot at a bottom 4 pick in 2025? I think Scotty is capable of driving winning, and they'll have enough people on the roster that they won't be bottom 4. I don't think. That's my personal thing. Slomo says, have either of you watched him play center Malwak? No, I haven't watched him play. I have no idea, but that's not what the claim is, of course. I will rely on my professional scout friends to help shepherd me through this kind of stuff. But we'll see. I'll keep that name in mind, though. I'll ask some of my scout friends, and when we do the scouting podcasts that are upcoming, I'll make sure to ask you about that. But as far as like bottom 4 for 2025, I don't think so. Scotty is really good. Like he made the All-Star game, and he didn't make it just on numbers. There's impact attached to that. And the Raptors, while they certainly haven't figured out what the rest of the team looks like and how they want to build it best going forward and all that kind of stuff, we're still definitely looking at a team that can put together some stuff, and certainly around the hub of Scotty Barnes. Coco says, who that's out can come back soon as she, just RJ? I think Gary probably is somebody who might come back soon, and then RJ, of course. But there's like management going on. They're managing injuries. They're managing like when people have inflammation. They're managing they're being careful with everybody. And I think Chris's injury, even though it was obviously that's not I don't think that was an overload injury or anything like that. It was like blunt trauma as far as that goes. The Raptors are maybe being a little bit more careful about everything, which I think makes sense because these guys' bodies are their avenue to their material conditions and their earns, like what they're able to make. So I appreciate that they're looking out for them, and also while acknowledging that that might align with what the Raptors' overall vision is for this season, i.e. they're tanking. And they're like, if we put too many of these guys out on the floor, we might beat the Detroit Pistons. And they look at where the Grizzlies are, and they look at the statistical likelihood of making the jump from 7 or 6 into the top 6 or whatever it has to be, right? Because it's the top 6 protected pick. Seems to me like this is tanking going on, if I had to guess. And usually with the tanking team, the most interesting thing to talk about is the young stars or prospective stars. And Emmanuel Quickley is probably the most interesting player. He and Grady Dick on this team. Quickley is like 25, so we're waiting on that. Grady, of course, is 20. We're seeing what's going on, man. But the Raptors are just trying to shake and move through the rest of the season. We want an entertaining game. We got it, really, really got it versus the Nuggets. A lot of interesting stuff happened in that game. A lot of fun. But I'll probably call it, this is the end of the podcast or close to it. If anybody's interested and you're interested in the draft and what's happening with the other Raptors pick, I think that Chicago and Indiana are heading into overtime. If anybody wants to spend their time doing that, go see about that. Because if Indiana wins, I think they jump into 5th, maybe. I don't know if they're 6th right now. I think they're 6th right now. They might jump into 5th. But Orlando has 2 games against the tanking Raptors coming up. So who knows how that's going to go. Jacob says go Chicago. Certainly. That would improve the pick. Every game against Indiana improves the pick slowly. So, yeah. Everybody who's been listening, thank you so much for doing so. While you're in here, feel free to like the video. It's how we get the video to other people. afterwards. The algorithm does the work, etc. If you want to subscribe to the channel, feel free to do so. And thanks for tuning in with me. Also, if you have the means and the will, you want to subscribe over at raptorsrepub.com, feel free to do so, because that is how we keep the website alive as the journalism industry crumbles around us. God bless. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day, and goodbye.